not that much plot to go through, really.
This is Doctor Who and the Daleks. So let me explain a bit about the Other, because the Other is an incarnation of the Doctor before William Hartnell, but after the Timeless Children, because of course the Doctor has had two mysterious regeneration cycles at some point. The Other was another one of the founding fathers of Time Lord Society, and being a version of the Doctor before the Doctor, is kind of Machiavellian in nature. He was a manipulator. This was all put to books really between the airing of Survival, the last episode of classic Doctor Who, and Rose, the first episode of modern Doctor Who. A lot of these stories featured the Seventh Doctor and him finding out who the Other is. One theory of who the Other is, because it's not really exactly pinned down, is the Other is Doctor Who, a human inventor from 1960s England who created TARDIS. Him and his granddaughters, Barbara and Susan, travelled in time and found the Daleks. This is the basic story of Doctor Who and the Daleks. It is also an adaptation of the William Hartnell serial The Unearthly Child, but mainly the Dalek bits of it. No.
I thought the Dalek bits were the Daleks.
Yeah, no, The Unearthly Child is the first serial. The Daleks is the second serial. I forgot the whole Cave Woman serial happened. It's not good. It's not that good of a serial, but it is the first serial.
He was trying to be pure historical.
Yeah, but so yes, it is more or less a retelling of the Doctor and Susan and Barbara and Ian Chesterton finding Skaro in the second serial of the show, and it isn't canon precisely. It isn't exactly canon. It is in a weird bit of canon where it might be true, but it probably isn't. But we're kind of treating this as its own thing. It is a retelling, really. You'd have to make a lot of conceits for this to be canon, particularly. It premiered in theatres in June 1965, and it's about 1 hour 20 in length. So
hopefully our review won't take that long.
Oh goodness. So the Doctor, well, I need to not call him the Doctor. He is not the Doctor. He is Doctor Who. He is played by Peter Cushing, and he has two granddaughters, Susan and Barbara. Of course, in the original serial, Barbara was not his granddaughter, but Ian Chesterton, Barbara's boyfriend, comes to visit. Of course, they're not boyfriend and girlfriend in the show. Do they get married later? I'm not entirely sure, but they're not boyfriend and girlfriend.
I think it's hinted at.
Pardon?
I think it's hinted at in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Right. Oh bloody hell! We're referencing so many different corners of canon, and I hope people get it. But yeah, so the Doctor creates TARDIS, a space-time machine that can go anywhere in space and time in his backyard. It is shaped like a police box for some reason. That's never particularly explained. And after Ian comes to deliver Barbara some chocolate with soft centres, they all find themselves in the TARDIS. In TARDIS. And Ian is very clumsy in this iteration. Very, very clumsy. Played by Roy Castle, though, a great slapstick kind of actor. And he triggers the controls. He presses down on a lever, which puts them in a random place in space and time, because Doctor Who hadn't set the controls. They find themselves on Skaro, where more or less the events of the Daleks in William Hartnell's era happens. They are captured by the Daleks. They're captured by the Daleks. They escape the Daleks. they find the Thals, a race who the Daleks' ancestors fought with, and the Daleks trick the Thals into coming to their base more or less to get slaughtered. The Daleks say to the Thals, "Hey, we have food," and the Thals go, and everyone ends up escaping. How was that for quick?
Yeah, no, but that was I think what we should do with most of the stuff, just a quick overview, and then we can go in depth with some other stuff.
Josh, I'll let you go in depth a bit with this one.
I'm just going to talk about some of my favourite moments, because I mean, the story as a whole isn't really that important, so I'll just go in with some of the good moments. That's okay?
Go ahead.
So I think one of the best moments is obviously the Daleks are they're not that scary in this.
Would you like some tea?
They're sort of just kind of comedic, I'd say, to a certain extent. So instead of firing the usual blaster, they fire what I'm thinking is some sort of gas fire extinguisher sort of thing.
Yeah.
It paralyzes you. It doesn't even kill you in some cases. In other cases, it does kill you. Very confusing.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like phasers in Star Trek that can be set to stun or kill.
Yeah. So then, obviously, when they're in the prison, Daleks bring them food, which is also kind of confusing since I don't think Daleks eat.
Yeah, the Daleks don't seem to need to eat. They run on static electricity in this incarnation. And in the original Doctor Who serial, I think they also run on static electricity.
Yeah,
so why do they need food?
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, but yeah. Also, so obviously, to get out of prison, Barbara smears some of this mushy food on the Dalek's eye stalk.
Oatmeal, kind of.
Yeah. So, you know.
So, of course,
a simple way to do it.
The Daleks can only see through their eye stalk. The way they escape is they push a Dalek onto a cape. I think Susan just happens to have a cape.
I think one of the Thals gave it to her when she went back for the radiation drug.
Oh yes, of course. Skaro is highly radiated by the war the Daleks had with the Tars. Well, I say the Daleks, the Kaleds had with the Tars. I don't think that's mentioned in this story, but I presume it to be Kaleds had with the Tars, and the Doctor. Sorry, not the Doctor Who. Barbara, Susan, and Ian are slowly dying. They have some anti-radiation drugs in TARDIS, though that Susan goes to get. And then Susan comes back.
Another point that I find quite funny about this is the Daleks just let them have some of the anti-radiation drugs. It's sort of like, oh yeah, okay, you've got 2 sets, take one to your friends. It's sort of just like, it's not really a Dalek thing to do.
Well, what do the Daleks get out of them dying before they give the Daleks all the information?
I mean, obviously, and then the Daleks tried to use the anti-radiation stuff on themselves, and they went crazy, I'm guessing. Just started spinning around.
I'm not sure I remember that bit, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, the bit where they give it to they're in like the room on the screen.
Ah, yes, the room and the screen.
Well, you know, they have this screen where they're monitoring the progress of how the drug's taken effect on these test Daleks.
Right. And they're just spinning around.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The Tals are very, what's the word, pacifist. They don't want to fight the Daleks. But they just want to get their food, you know? What reason have the Daleks to refuse it to us if they have it, you know? That's what they think. I don't actually remember much about what happens with the Thals. It's not very memorable.
think it's they go to the. They sort of sit around, and the Doctor Who's like, "Why don't you help us? Why don't you fight back to save your history and have you in the future?" And the Files are like, "No, we're pacifists. We fight long. Our ancestors fight. We don't." Sort of like that. So they try to leave, and then they can't leave for some reason. I don't think is it explained why they can't leave?
I think they'd have to trek through a desert.
No, but they're in the area with TARDIS, and they go to leave, but for some reason they can't.
Right.
And I don't know whether it's explained.
If you can't tell, I haven't memorised this story as much as I memorised The Time of Children.
Well, you probably watched this less.
Yes.
Yeah, so for some reason they can't leave, and so they go back out, and they're like to the Files, "Oh, well, you know what? We'll help you." So I think it's Doctor Who and Susan go into the city and get captured.
Yeah.
And the Daleks are like, "Oh, we're going to end the Files by just blowing up launching another bomb."
Hmm.
And then
you're much better at calling him Doctor Who than I am. I keep calling him the Doctor by mistake.
That's because I keep freezing before I say his name.
Ah, right.
So the Files come in through the back over this really deep sort of ravine that's just in the middle of nowhere.
Mm.
And one of them doesn't want to jump, and then jumps anyway, but falls down. And it looks like he's just going to cut himself loose, but somehow grabs onto the side and gets pulled up.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's a bit of a weird character.
Yeah.
He just keeps wanting to leave, but then the ceiling just falls in. So, no, all of a sudden he can't leave.
He's just not here for it. He doesn't want to fight.
Yeah.
He wants nothing more than to get home to his wife. And frankly, who can blame him? His wife is very nice.
Yeah, of course. So then they get into the Dalek city, and sort of, I think it's Ian stops the explosion in the end, kind of, I wouldn't say completing his character arc, because he didn't really have one, but he did something for his character.
As much as a 1 hour and 20-minute film can give a secondary cast member a character arc, they kind of did. Ian is certainly less cowardly by the end.
Yeah. I think there's one of the scenes I did enjoy, though, is the one where he's trying to open the door and he has to keep sitting down. And it's kind of just like, why would the Daleks have that to open the door? Because they can't sit down on the thing.
I don't know, but it is a nice comedy scene. Roy Castle was a very good comedy actor. Unfortunately, he is no longer with us. But yeah. He was good at it.
Obviously, they stopped the explosion and just left at the end.
Yeah,
I think that's like the whole movie explained.
Everyone leaves via TARDIS. Not the Files don't go in for TARDIS. But Doctor Who, Barbara, Susan, and Ian leave via TARDIS, and they find themselves in the way of Roman gladiators. TARDIS is just in the middle of Roman gladiators. They have not gone back to London 1965. So
that's basically it.
Yeah, we pick up later on with what happens after the Roman gladiators. But yeah, Josh, what did you think of this episode? Okay, so I should clarify my terminology. Everything's an episode. A chapter of a book, yeah, that's an episode. It's just so I can say, yeah, this is the second episode we're watching. This is a movie, of course, but everything's an episode to me. Josh, what did you think of this episode, and what's your rating out of 10?
Well, obviously, I haven't watched the original serial yet, so I don't know how true to the source material it is.
Who cares?
Obviously, it's a bit different because obviously Barbara's his granddaughter and all that. The characters are slightly different. I go entertaining. Obviously, it was made as a movie. It was the first time we saw anything to do with Doctor Who in colour.
That's true.
So, yeah, I'd say it's very entertaining for what it is. obviously, I don't know budget-wise and everything. I don't really want to go into that, but it seems pretty high budget for the time.
I don't have the budget details on me. Otherwise, I'd tell you.
Yeah, so it's entertaining. That's all I'm going to say. And entertainment value-wise, I'd go 7 out of 10.
Cool. Christopher, you haven't talked this entire segment. I am led to believe that you haven't actually seen this, but from our description, what do you think? What's your rating out of 10? And would you watch it?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would watch it. It sounds quite amusing. I remember in one of the descriptions, I think on one of our earlier chats, someone described the Daleks as being extremely British and polite, which sounds quite amusing.
The Daleks were, yes.
Yes. Gotta love a bit of casual Dalek.
Well,
and for
formal
that
Dalek.
reason, I guess, let's go, once again, 6 out of 10.
Cool. I think for the time, this was a feat. This was an absolute feat of movie making for the time. In terms of where it is in the Doctor Who canon, it is weirdly placed, but in terms of what it did for the franchise, it was great. It was never really canon because of the character changes, but oh well. Peter Cushing is brilliant in it, as he always is and always has been in everything that he does. He's also brilliant as Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars and other products like that. Roy Castle is brilliant in it. Roberta Tovey is brilliant for child actress, and Jenny Linden doesn't do much. In terms of story, it adapts heavily from the Daleks, but I think it adapts it pretty well into a movie format. My rating is 7 out of 10.
So before we move on, there's just 2 things that I forgot to mention.
Go on.
So I think one of the best scenes is when they have the rope and they sort of sling the Dalek into the elevator. I think that's hilarious, and I'm surprised they haven't actually done that in a TV episode since.
I think there's a GIF of that, and you can see the Dalek's eye stalk fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is very funny.
Yeah.
And another point I'd like to make is I think the casting's very good. Like,
yeah.
They all seem to, like, the chemistry between them is very good, and they all seem to work well.
Yeah. Now, because of the place in the timeline of the Doctor, this is not the last we're going to see of Doctor Who, because all of his stories take place in a little bubble, and all of them are around the same place. After Doctor Who and the Daleks, we move on to slightly further on in the timeline, where Doctor Who is still travelling with Susan, Barbara, and Ian. And after the adventure with the Romans that we didn't see, we get to Doctor Who and the House on Old Dark Moor.